Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world with me, Deepika. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. India and Philippines exchange key MoUs in defense, space, tourism and other key sectors, elevate ties to strategic partnership level. India-Philippines cooperation in maritime sector is progressing well, says Ministry of External Affairs. Both the leaders agree to enhance defense cooperation amidst other key sectors. India counters Trump's tariff threat, terms US-European Union criticism unjustified and unreasonable, says will take all necessary steps to safeguard national interest and economy. Major rescue measures deployed as flash floods wreak havoc in Uttarakhand's Dharali. Prime Minister Modi expresses condolences, takes stock of the situation, ensures complete assistance. Marking a significant milestone in diplomatic relationship, Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. met at Hyderabad House in New Delhi and agreed to elevate India-Philippines bilateral relationship to a strategic partnership. The leaders also witnessed exchange of the plan of action for implementation of the strategic partnership. India and Philippines share close bonds based on the foundation of civilizational, historical and people-to-people connections. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Philippines President Marcos Jr. also held delegation-level talks and discussed various aspects of boosting India-Philippines ties in a host of sectors. Prime Minister Narendra Modi witnessed the exchange of several MoUs and attended a joint press meet with Philippines President Marcos Jr. Several important documents, including Mutual Legal Assistance Treaty in Criminal Matters, Treaty on Transfer of Sentenced Prisoners, Terms of Reference on Negotiations of India-Philippines Preferential Trade Agreement, Terms of Reference on Establishments of Staff Talks between Defence Forces in the area of space, tourism, culture, science and technology and digital technologies were also exchanged. Addressing the joint press meet with President Marcos Jr., Prime Minister Narendra Modi said that India and Philippines have agreed to elevate ties to strategic partnership.
आज हमने अपने संबंधों को स्ट्रैटेजिक पार्टनरशिप का दर्जा देने का निर्णय लिया है। इस पार्टनरशिप के पोटेंशियल को परिणामों में परिवर्तित करने के लिए एक व्यापक एक्शन प्लान भी बनाया गया है। हमारा बायलैटरल ट्रेड निरंतर बढ़ रहा है और $3 बिलियन का आंकड़ा पार कर चुका है। इसे और मजबूत करने के लिए इंडिया आसियान फ्री ट्रेड एग्रीमेंट के रिव्यू को जल्द से जल्द पूरा करना हमारी प्राथमिकता है। साथ ही हमने द्विपक्षीय प्रेफरेंशियल ट्रेड एग्रीमेंट की दिशा में काम करने का फैसला भी किया है। इंफॉर्मेशन एंड डिजिटल टेक्नोलॉजी, स्वास्थ्य, ऑटोमोबाइल्स, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर, मिनरल्स, हर सेक्टर में हमारी कंपनियां सक्रिय रूप से काम कर रही हैं। विज्ञान और टेक्निक के क्षेत्र में वायरोलॉजी से लेकर एआई और एडिटिव मैन्युफैक्चरिंग तक जॉइंट रिसर्च चल रही है। आज संपन्न हुए साइंस एंड टेक्नोलॉजी कोऑपरेशन प्लान से इसमें और गति आएगी।
Prime Minister Narendra Modi also welcomed the Philippines' decision to grant visa-free entry to Indian tourists, adding that India would also offer free e-visas to tourists from the Philippines.
म्यूचुअल लीगल असिस्टेंस और ट्रांसफर ऑफ सेंटेंस पर्सन्स के विषयों पर आज हुए समझौतों से हमारी सुरक्षा साझेदारी को और बल मिलेगा। फ्रेंड्स, भारतीय पर्यटकों को वीजा फ्री एंट्री देने के फिलीपींस के निर्णय का हम स्वागत करते हैं। भारत ने भी फिलीपींस के पर्यटकों को फ्री ई वीजा सुविधा देने का फैसला लिया है। इस साल दिल्ली और मनीला के बीच डायरेक्ट फ्लाइट्स शुरू करने के लिए काम किया जाएगा।
The President of the Philippines, Marcos Jr., also acknowledged India's contribution to making the Indo-Pacific a free and open region.
Safe navigation and security are important, especially for Filipino seafarers who are on almost every ship plying these historic and strategic sea lanes. I again thank the Indian people and the brave men and women of the Indian Navy through Prime Minister Modi for your kind rescue of our nationals in 2024 after a Houthi rebel attack. We recognize India's influence as first responder role in this critical area, and we want to work with you for a free and open Indo-Pacific. We both have high stakes in the future of our Indo-Pacific region and in the world. The Philippines-India strategic partnership will doubtless resonate beyond the confines of our bilateral relationship.
Philippines President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., who is on a 5-day visit to India, was welcomed by a guard of honor and accorded a ceremonial reception at the forecourt of Rashtrapati Bhavan. The visiting dignitary was warmly greeted by President Draupadi Murmu and Prime Minister Narendra Modi. President Marcos Jr. reaffirmed the alliance and the partnership India and Philippines share in strengthening the bond. The leader also said that Indo-Pacific is the correct evolution of Asia-Pacific.
It is a reaffirmation of the alliance and the partnership that we are strengthening. Where we used to refer to the Asia-Pacific region, we now refer to as the Indo-Pacific region, which is the I think a correct evolution of that understanding because of the global nature of all of politics and of all of trade and all of the economy. And to build upon what we already have had, but certainly to explore the many opportunities that have arisen in the past few years because of the new technologies and the changing state of the global economy and the geopolitics around us now.
Later, President Marcos Jr. also paid his tributes to Mahatma Gandhi at Rajghat by laying a wreath at Mahatma Gandhi's memorial. The leaders shared commitment to the ideals of truth and non-violence. India's External Affairs held a special briefing on the state visit of Philippines President to India. Briefing the media, Secretary East informed that India and the Philippines have signed 14 MoUs in the fields of criminal matters, terms of reference for trade agreement, cooperation in space, digital technology and tourism, among others.
Several agreements, MoUs, were concluded and exchanged during the visit. There were 11 of them. 14 of them. These include mutual legal assistance treaty in criminal matters, a treaty on transfer of sentenced persons, terms of reference on negotiations for the India-Philippines Preferential Trade Agreement, terms of reference for service, staff talks, Army, Air Force and Navy, enhanced cooperation between Coast Guards, statement of intent on cooperation in space, cultural exchange program, a program of cooperation in science and technology, an MoU for cooperation in digital technologies, and an implementation program for tourist cooperation.
Now further, Secretary Kumaran said that maritime security cooperation between India and the Philippines is progressing well.
The cooperation between India and Philippines in the area of maritime domain awareness and maritime security is progressing well. 4 Indian ships have recently concluded their visits to the Philippines for maritime cooperative activities and a demonstration of India's hydrographic capabilities.
Now, as part of its operational deployment to Southeast Asia, Indian naval ships INS Delhi, INS Shakti and INS Kiltan concluded a successful port call in Manila, Philippines. The visit featured high-level diplomatic engagements, professional exchanges and a bilateral maritime exercise with the Philippine Navy from 30th of July till the 4th of August. The two navies also conducted sea drills covering anti-air, anti-surface and anti-submarine warfare, showcasing tactical coordination and operational synergy. These high-level interactions underscored the growing strategic convergence between the two maritime nations and reflected a shared vision for a free, open and inclusive Indo-Pacific. Well, the Indian government has strongly hit back at the US after Donald Trump threatened to substantially raise tariff on goods from India over its purchase of Russian oil. In a statement issued by the Ministry of External Affairs, the government stated it has been targeted by the United States and European Union over its purchase of Russian oil. It said that India began importing from Russia because traditional supplies were diverted to Europe after the outbreak of the conflict. The United States at that time actively encouraged such imports by India for strengthening global energy market stability. The government added that India's imports are meant to ensure predictable and affordable energy costs to the Indian consumer, and they are a necessity compelled by global market situation. However, it is revealing that the very nations criticizing India are themselves indulging themselves in trade with Russia. So unlike our case, such trade is not even a vital national compulsion. The ministry put forth figures of European Union's oil trade with Russia, saying that in the year 2024, they had a bilateral trade of 67.5 billion euros in goods with Russia. In addition, it had trade in services estimated at 17.2 billion euros in 2023. Now, this is significantly more than India's total trade with Russia that year or subsequently. European imports of LNG in 2024 in fact reached a record 16.5 million tonnes, surpassing the last record of 15.21 million tonnes in 2022. The government also mentioned that Europe-Russia trade includes not just energy, but also fertilizers, mining products, chemicals, iron and steel and machinery, along with transport equipment. Talking about the US, MEA said that America continues to import from Russia uranium hexafluoride for its nuclear industry, palladium for its EV industry, fertilizers as well as chemicals. The Indian government has also stated that in this scenario, the government of India is unjustified and unreasonable. It also clearly stated that like any other major economy, India will take all necessary measures to safeguard its national interest and economic security. A recent SBI research report warns that US President Donald Trump's proposed tariffs on India could harm the US economy more than India's. The report, released on Friday, the 1st of August, predicts higher US inflation, a weaker dollar and GDP decline, labeling the tariffs a bad business decision. US consumers may face an extra $2,400 annually, with low-income households hit harder. India, diversifying its export markets, relies less on the US, which accounts for 20% of its exports. India supplies 47% of US generic drugs, and shifting production could cause shortages and price hikes as well. And to give you a rounded perspective on this, I'm joined by Ambassador Sanjay Bhattacharya, the former Secretary of Ministry of External Affairs. Good evening, sir. Now, talking about the current situation, India has strongly reacted to US's latest tariff threat, emphasizing on its India-first approach. What does your analysis speak on India's response?
Well, I think if you would recall, Prime Minister Modi was one of the first visitors to the White House after the inauguration of the US presidency under Trump. And Prime Minister Modi at that particular point of time had offered that the option was actually through bilateral negotiations. And right now, as we speak, we are engaged in bilateral negotiations for an FTA between India and the United States. At such a point of time, to introduce these arbitrary tariffs is rather unjustified. And I think the Indian government has and should react responsibly as well as strongly in such a case. It is quite clear that, in a case like this, to label the issue of Russian imports by India of energy supplies is clearly unjustified, because we are well aware that the European Union has large imports of energy. In fact, its LNG imports increased in 2024 over 2023. The United States itself is a large energy importer of Russian uranium sources for its nuclear program. So at such a stage, to introduce an arbitrary 25% tariff on India is wholly unjustified.
Indeed. And a recent report also says that imposing such tariffs would only harm the US economy and will further impact its market. We would like to understand from you, sir, the repercussions of US's tariffs on the US itself.
Well, any tariff that is imposed in such a manner, and particularly if the Indian side does not wish to reduce the prices, will lead to increase in prices for the US consumer. Because if a certain product, say for example, textiles is sold at $100, and if today we introduce a tariff of 25%, then that's going to become 125. And who's going to pay for that? It has to be the US consumer. So in a sense, because it is not so easy to diversify the imports that come from India, whether it's in the case of textiles or pharmaceuticals, certain electronic items, it'll become extremely more difficult for the US consumer. I do understand that the tariff will also impose a certain downward pressure on the export price that will emanate from such countries. And there may be some amount of tariff shopping that importers in the United States may encourage and may have to indulge in. But I doubt if that would be very successful in the current scenario, as India continues to be a significant producer and a growing producer of many of these items, often in collaboration. But I think the most important thing is that this would amount to, as I feel, a certain breach of trust of a very strong and growing partnership between the two countries.
Indeed. Do you also think that the US would be able to further stretch it because the US and European Union both already have trade ties with Russia? Or is this just another move to negotiate on few of the areas?
I think what is probably happening is that the United States and the European Union cannot fathom why India can take an independent position. But I think if you look at history, India has had an independent position for a very long time. And we do not believe that we need to be allies of either or any power, because we can write our own path and our own destiny. And I think some of that has happened, because soon after the announcement of this 25% tariff, there was a much stronger move towards Make in India, in which we look for greater self-sufficiency and reliability of our own domestic production and consumption chains. What we've also pointed out is that this is actually hypocritical, and they should not expect this, as you also have pointed out earlier in this report, that the Europeans and Americans themselves buy a lot of stuff from the Russians. We are actually helping the global economy by buying the Russian oil at such a stage.
Indeed. All right. Thank you so much, Ambassador Bhattacharya, for joining us and bringing us a rounded perspective on India's strong statement on tariffs. Moving on. Russia accused the United States on Tuesday of exerting illegal trade pressures on India after US President Donald Trump threatened again to raise tariffs on India over its purchases of Russian oil. Kremlin spokesperson said that Russia believes that sovereign countries should have and do have the right to choose their own trading partners.
We hear many statements that are in fact threats, attempts to force countries to cut trade relations with Russia. We do not consider such statements to be legal. We believe that sovereign countries should have and do have the right to choose their own trading partners, partners for trade and economic cooperation, and to choose for themselves the forms of trade and economic cooperation that are in the interests of a particular nation.
Moving on, a 3-day joint operation was launched by the Indian Army, Jammu and Kashmir Police and the Border Security Forces in Kashmir. The joint operation was launched in Kupwada's Kalaroos. During the search, a hideout was busted that resulted in the recovery of a pistol, 2 magazines, 12 grenades, ammunition and other warlike stores. A massive cloudburst struck Dharali district of the hilly state of Uttarakhand on Tuesday, prompting flooding of Kheer Ganga river. The sudden calamity caused mayhem on a large scale as people started rushing to safer places. Chief Minister of the state, Pushkar Singh Dhami, expressed condolences on the loss of lives and property. Chief Minister has directed the officials to promptly begin rescue actions in the affected area. Uttarakhand's Chief Minister is continuously monitoring the overall situation and is also assured of all possible assistance to the affected families.
उत्तरकाशी जनपद के धराली क्षेत्र में बादल फटने की अभी सूचना आई है और बहुत तेज गति से मलबा आया है पानी के साथ। हमारा प्रयास है कि इस समय में सभी को जल्दी से जल्दी राहत के काम किए जाएं, बचाव के कार्य किए जाएं। जिला प्रशासन के लोग वहां पहुंच रहे हैं, साथ में हमारे सेना के लोग, एनडीआरएफ, एसडीआरएफ, आपदा प्रबंधन विभाग लगातार कोशिश कर रहा है कि हमारी सर्वोच्च प्राथमिकता है कि सभी को इस समय राहत की जाए, सभी को बचाया जाए और हर प्रकार से जान माल की सुरक्षा की जाए।
Home Minister Amit Shah spoke to Chief Minister Pushkar Singh Dhami and expressed his sorrow over the fateful incident. He assured of all possible support from the central government. He also directed NDRF and other disaster management agencies to work effectively. The Home Minister is in continuous communication with the state government on the situation. Meanwhile, the Indian Army mobilized 150 personnel who reached the site and commenced rescue operations. So far, 15 to 20 individuals have been successfully evacuated, with the injured receiving prompt medical treatment at the Indian Army medical facility in Harshil. A 16-member team from Indo-Tibetan Border Force and 3 teams from National Disaster Response Force have also arrived at the cloudburst site in Uttarkashi to assist in rescue operations. Prime Minister Narendra Modi expressed his condolences over the cloudburst disaster that happened in the Dharali district of the North Indian state of Uttarakhand on Tuesday afternoon. Prime Minister said, and I quote him here, "I express my condolences to the people affected by this tragedy in Dharali, Uttarkashi. I pray for the well-being of all the victims. I have spoken to Chief Minister Pushkar Singh Dhami ji and obtained information about the situation. Under the supervision of the state government, teams are engaged in relief and rescue efforts to extend every possible assistance. No stone is being left unturned in providing assistance to the people," unquote. Now, former Jammu and Kashmir Governor Satyapal Malik passed away on Tuesday at the age of 79 in Delhi's Ram Manohar Lohia Hospital after prolonged illness. Admitted since the 11th of May for a urinary tract infection, Malik suffered from diabetic kidney disease, hypertension and multi-organ dysfunction, succumbing at 1:10 p.m. local time. His 5-decade political career spanned multiple parties, including BJP and Janata Dal, and governorships in Bihar, Odisha, Goa and Meghalaya. Notably, he oversaw the revocation of Article 370 in 2019. Expressing grief over his demise, Prime Minister Narendra Modi posted on social media site X, and I quote him here, "Saddened by the passing away of Satyapal Malik ji, my thoughts are with his family and supporters in this hour of grief. Om Shanti," unquote. On to business updates now. Indian equity indices ended lower with Nifty below 24,700 on Tuesday. At close, the Sensex was down 308.47 points at 80,710.25 and the Nifty was down 73.2 points at 24,649.55. The Indian rupee ended lower at 87.8 per dollar on Tuesday versus the previous close of 87.65. Meanwhile, oil prices continued their downwards trend, with Brent crude falling to $68.45 a barrel, down 1.46% from the previous day, and WTI crude at $66.29 a barrel, reflecting a 0.17% decline. Delegates from some 180 countries kicked off on Tuesday the final round of talks on a global plastic pollution treaty in Geneva. The delegates hope for a last-chance ambitious pact to curb plastic pollution that have dimmed. Now, diplomats and climate advocates warn that efforts by the European Union and small island states to cap virgin plastic production fueled by petroleum, coal and gas are threatened by opposition from petrochemical producing countries and the US administration of President Trump. According to the OECD, plastic production is set to triple by the year 2060 without intervention, choking oceans, harming human health and accelerating climate change. The most divisive issues include capping production, managing plastic products and chemicals of concerns, and financing to help developing countries implement the treaty. Now, Turkey's one lake is bustling with migratory flamingos as they make a stopover over the lake. Locally known as Aliturna, these birds create a visual marvel with their colorful plumage, adding colors to the background of the setting sun and deep blue waters. The arrival of these migratory visitors has brought life to the lake, offering a spectacular view for the photography enthusiasts. And that's all for this edition of DD India Live. But do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, please take all the latest news and updates look on DD India and across the world on the mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download it right now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I am Deepika, and from all of us here in New Delhi, thank you so much for watching DD India Live. Namaskar.